Hello, welcome to Some Notes on Style. I'm your host, Joseph. This week, with kids going back to school and the faint breeze of cooler air in the mornings, we're going to take a quick look at the American Ivy League style. It's the style of New Hollywood, American presidents, IBM executives, jazz legends, literary geniuses, and Bluto Blutarski. Also known as preppy, trad, old money, dark academia, East Coast style, Ivy League style, each of these variations of this distinctly American way of dressing can run together and yet have subtle distinctions differentiating each of these terms. Although ultimately a lot of the origins and reference points are all the same. American Ivy League style developed throughout the 20th century, incorporating elements of sporting clothing as university athletic programs began to grow. Button-down polo collars, knit polo shirts, jersey rugbies, tennis sweaters, boat shoes, canvas sneakers, all incorporated seamlessly into the language of Ivy style. Also, since a lot of the American aristocracy kept a nod toward English heritage, several elements of British country clothing were incorporated as well. Things like sporting tweed jackets, Shetland sweaters, brogued wingtips, rep ties, and flannel suitings. The long tradition of Ivy League schools brings with it a language of clothing which included a wide range of timeless pieces which all work together to form our notion of a traditional college wardrobe. Of course, this sense of traditionalism comes with several caveats, primarily being that for the large part of the 20th century, these socially elite schools like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, or Columbia mostly only educated the wealthy children of some of the most prestigious families in the country, almost guaranteeing graduates with a lifetime of inherited privilege. Not to mention the fact that the majority of these students tended to skew toward Anglo-Saxon white young men. So, of course, the parameters which established this style do have some factors which must be acknowledged, but certainly do not have to be integral into its definition. This is, of course, much like America itself, a conglomeration of references and a collection of pieces, each with their own origins. And in mid-century America, we also saw the return of GIs from the Second World War with government-backed tuitions, entering into colleges of all types all around the country. And with this large influx of young students with varying financial backgrounds, the American college uniform began to settle into a handful of familiar items with which any student could pick up from the local university clothing shop and create their own foundational wardrobe, which would easily carry them through their college years and well into their adult working life. And with this being the mid-20th century, the full extent of clothing choices was also somewhat limited, since designer clothing had not yet been conceived. So it was with this iconic language of an educated wardrobe that young men and graduates learned that these standard items would not only be subtle indicators of the wearer's background and education, but could also provide a lifetime's worth of guaranteed acceptability through the clothing's simplicity and timelessness. For the most part, these Ivy League staples were offered in small mom-and-pop, independently owned university clothing shops in college towns or nationally in old traditional clothiers like New York's Brooks Brothers or Madison Avenue's J. Press, Chip, or Paul Stewart. O'Connell's Clothier, Cable Car Clothiers comes out of San Francisco, or Ben Silver in Charleston. Gant is a traditional outfitter that offered a somewhat sportier take on the traditional classics. L. Bean, Land's End, and J. Crew also evolved eventually and came out to provide more affordable basics. And over the course of the second half of the 20th century, collegiate dressing gave way to what became trendier offspring, that of preppy dressing through the 1970s and 80s. Became more and more commercially viable in the mass market as designer brands like Ralph Lauren's Polo, Tommy Hilfiger, or the newly retooled Abercrombie & Fitch began to pump up the volume of this decidedly American vernacular with more color, more graphics, more layering, and more romanticized ad campaigns selling the imagery of a life of privilege, even if its bearing on reality was somewhat exaggerated. Preppy and Ivy League dressing most recently saw its return to popularity in the mid-2010s when, thanks to growing internet presence on blogs and discussion forums, the rigid intricacies of the style were dissected and defined like never before. During this time I was designing for Ralph Lauren, simultaneously learning these standards inside and out. In the New York design circles, there was growing rumors of an up-and-coming reprint of an Ivy League style foundational reference book, Take Ivy. Author Shosuke Ishizu and photographer Teruyoshi Hayashida traveled from Japan to the United States in 1965 with the intention of documenting the styles of American Ivy League university students at the time. The book was almost like an issue of National Geographic magazine, documenting the lives and lifestyles of these regional tribal college kids. And because most Ivy League university shops' advertisements comprised of black and white line art in the back corners of school programs, there was not a great deal of clear imagery documenting the origins of traditional college dressing. It was a kind of book that was impossible to find, so if anyone you knew had a copy, it became a holy grail of mood board inspiration. And as the internet chat rooms and blogs began to get a hold of high-res scanned images, readers too could share in the delight of finding the absolute truth of what defined the earliest traditions of the preppy aesthetic. Within the pages you would see guys walking around the campus from dorms to classrooms, pairing their chinos with their tweeds, wearing their Letterman sweaters with their cordovan loafers and white socks, plenty of Oxford shirts of every color, and lots of Madras plaids, worn with anything they could grab out of their closet. Occasionally we would see some Levi's 501s thrown in, but very carefully so as not to look like too much of a greaser. For the most part, we could see richly colored Kodachromes showing these clothes that we had all become so familiar with, worn the way most college kids wear their clothes, which was loosely pulled together, a little schlubby, and generally pretty worn in. But there was a lot of honesty to the way these guys wore their clothes. Everything had a sense of being well loved and put on without a great deal of thought or artifice. These were not images artfully styled like a Bruce Weber Polo ad. These were real kids wearing their school clothes that their parents bought them, putting together outfits by picking up whatever was clean on the dorm room floor. Another amazing first-hand insight into the bare reality of mid-century Ivy League dressing came from the quickly growing blog platform created by street style photographer Scott Schumann, also known as the Sartorialist, which sometimes featured the writings of Esquire contributor and former Town and Country style editor G. Bruce Boyer, who wrote incredible short pieces recalling his own college days in the late 1950s, fondly described the simplicity with which he could grow his own timeless style, thanks to the foundations of Ivy League dressing from his local university shop. From his article A Curmudgeon's Lament comes a rundown of the essentials. The basic items were the Oxford cloth button-down shirt and cotton twill khaki trousers. 6 shirts, 3 white and 3 blue, and 2 or 3 pair of khakis would do the job. In cooler weather, a Shetland crewneck sweater in any color was added, a pair of brown penny loafers and white tennis sneakers, possibly a pair of white or tan buckskin Oxfords, constituted the acceptable range of footwear. For outerwear, a cotton gabardine Balmacan raincoat, always in tan, and a stout duffel coat in tan or navy were all that were needed, although many men also had a cotton gab golf jacket, also in tan. Everyone had a tweed sports jacket, Harris tweed or Shetland, and or a navy single-breasted blazer for semi-dress, and a gray flannel for dress. Summer semi-formality was assured with a seersucker or tan poplin suit. Some had Madras sports jackets. For the most formal occasions, a dark gray or navy trop-worsted suit. Half-dozen ties, regimentals, foullards or dots, and the necessary complement of underwear, socks, pajamas, and handkerchiefs filled out the basics. These dozen garments or so weren't the end-all be-all, of course. There was a myriad of other attractions for the dandies amongst us. Silk knit ties, plain black or navy was best with square cut ends, and paisley pocket squares, odd flannel trousers, broadcloth tab collar shirts, cordovan brogues and Scotch grain wingtips, navy worsted pinstripes with vests, white duck trousers for the summer, lamb's wool turtlenecks for the winter. A sophisticated young man may have splurged on a camel hair polo coat. Everyone seems to have colorfully striped surcingle belts with brass horseshoe-shaped buckles, and the brightest argyle socks. So with that checklist in mind, let's take a look at our own 24 variations in the American Ivy League wardrobe. First up, for Inauguration Day, opening ceremonies, this classic Ivy League formal standard of navy blazer, gray flannels, blue Oxford shirt, and a rep tie can be worn by all ages in nearly any formal setting. It's perfectly acceptable. As the fall begins to set in, a warm Harris tweed jacket keeps the look pulled together and warms up any outfit just enough without overheating, keeping the outfit generally neutral with a classic pair of surplus khakis and a pink Oxford shirt was a nice touch of color without going too strong. If there's a little morning mist in the air or the temperature hits those pre-autumn chilly mornings, throwing on a coated Macintosh over your Shetland sweater fights off the elements. Wearing gray with khaki tends to give this look kind of tonality and a modern edge, keeping all your neutrals together. Here's a way of wearing your navy blazer in a slightly less formal way, notching down one spot from the shirt and tie to a striped Oxford and sweater combo. With this kind of look, you still maintain a degree of formality, but keeping comfort at the same time. Lighter shade of khakis balances the shades of blues up top and easily helps to bridge this look from sunny days of summer to the early days of spring. For the most formal occasions, say a job interview or an executive oil portrait, the 1950s gray flannel suit with a crisp white Oxford and a rep tie does the job. In the 1950s, this business suit outfit was pretty much standard issue. In any case, the patch pockets on the jacket kept the look hinting at its Ivy origins without giving way to any sharp mod stylings of the Madison Avenue ad agencies. Back on campus, as the cool air begins to set in, a comfy toggle coat can be worn over your flannels and your shaggy dog sweater. If you've ever worn one of these guys, you know it is comfortable as throwing a blanket on over your shoulders. They're usually cut pretty roomy, and the thickness of the wool tends to have an almost sponginess, which keeps the cold away while keeping you feeling warm and cozy. Since the shaggy dogs come in such a wide variety of colors, this could be your time to express yourself, put a little color in your outfits. Next up, a good Harris tweed blazer in this nice rich olive color can once again be dressed up or down. In this case, by pairing it with a knit tie, some gray flannels, and a white dress shirt, the subtleness of the color can provide a lot of depth thanks to the jacket's marled appearance. It pairs nicely with heathered flannels, giving an otherwise flat look a degree of visual interest on the surface. Another variation of the sporty blazer look, pairing some casual cotton chinos with some cotton canvas sneakers and layering a gray sweatshirt over a white Oxford. Similar to the last navy blazer look, this time with a little more neutral base. The blazer helps to frame out the outfit and keep a degree of formality to the sporty look you can wear when you're running down to the library. If you have a long night and you don't feel like getting out of your striped pajamas to get that cup of coffee in the morning, if you were lucky enough to own a fitted camel polo coat, you could easily throw it on top and be perfectly presentable. Similar to the duffel coat, the polo coat is also one of the coziest pieces of outerwear you'll ever own. Despite its sharp tailored appearance, the thickness of the wool and the generous cut makes you feel like you're wearing a robe. Its dressiness allows it to be worn with your most formal of suiting, and yet it creates a lot of interesting visual contrast when paired with casual or sporting clothes. Just a regular day of class and don't know what to wear? Just grab that tweed. Here we have a nice wool tie with an Oxford and some olive green chinos, which help the look to sit in nicely as the leaves begin to change into their rich golds and yellows all around your sprint across campus. As the winter really begins to set in here, we've taken some Harris tweed, in this case an olive jacket, layered it over a warmer base layer. Soft plush corduroys are one of the greatest feelings of the year, reminding you fall is finally here. Add a nice cherry red cardigan. It's a great way of adding a bit of punch to an otherwise drab fall outfit. Maybe it was something about the 1950s, but occasionally we would see these bright pops of cherry red within the color palette of the Ivy wardrobe. Maybe the Kodachrome film helped to keep those reds so vibrant. Another simple duffel coat look. This time we've got a Shetland shaggy dog and a nice olive green marl. This look keeps it nice and earthy. It's a look worn by all your faves, from Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman all the way down to Woody Allen. From the high point of fall all the way through the dog days of winter, this kind of look keeps you ready for anything Mother Nature throws at you. Here's another neutral monochromatic outfit, this time for warmer late summer or spring days. We've got the iconic Barracuda jacket providing a nice thin layer to frame out this look. Here's a somber tweed look, once again with the nubby knit and some heathered flannels. It's the kind of look that may not look like much at first glance, but it really acts as a nice flattering foundation, showcasing the wearer nicely. Navy blazer and khakis ruined by private school uniforms the world over. With such a closet standard, you didn't really have to think about it too much. In this look we prepared, you've got a striped Oxford with a striped rep tie, being careful to balance the colors and the proportions of the stripes so that way it doesn't get too busy. For the most part, this kind of look is something you really don't have to think about very much. Barracuda, back at it again. This is the 1950s after all, so we occasionally see hints of guys on the cutting edge wearing their Levi's 501s with a white t-shirt. This kind of look certainly was not confused with Marlon Brando and the Wild Bunch, but it certainly was a nod of things to come, as jeans and college kids quickly became more closely associated than any college kids in navy blazers. Touch of Indian Madras, in this case with a nicely cut soft-shouldered sport coat. All throughout the pages of Take Ivy, we see Indian bleeding Madras all throughout the universities all over the country. This plaid fabric was all the rage in the late 1950s, perfect for springtime. It gave any outfit a bit of a jaunty edge. The fabric was thin and cool, so it was best cut for the spring and summer months. Jackets cut with Madras felt as comfy as wearing a nice thin plaid shirt. Keeping it tonal with the tweed, that gray sweatshirt makes a comeback, again this time with some light chinos and that beautiful olive mixed Harris tweed jacket. Sporty and traditional, warm and cool. Next up, the Letterman jacket. Obviously, college university sport programs were all the rage, so earning your letter was quite an achievement. Why not wear it with your Oxford and your cords? The mix of heavy flannel and leather sleeves kept a degree of warmth, but mostly worked really well in those transitional periods as a sporty, colorful graphic jacket you could grab on the go. Here's the polo coat in another dress casual mix, this time wearing it with a collared shirt and a Shetland, but playing it down against the rich indigo denim of some Levi's 501s. Rich, deep camel color of the polo coat really stands out against this neutral base. The tweed jacket and turtleneck for the artsy beatnik. Something you could wear down to the coffee shop or a poetry reading. The 1960s were just around the corner. But with your comfy tweed and your warm turtleneck, this is the kind of look that kept a sportiness with your traditional clothes, while asserting you were an academic nonetheless. In the early days of spring, if you really wanted to go for it, why not throw on your Letterman over your Madras in one of the wildest pairings you could make? Mixing color blocking and plaid, sometimes you'd see guys throwing this kind of look together, probably more by chance than intention. The varsity sweater with that nice mid-century graphic across the chest. Sure, some guys went with their college name or a crest as a graphic, but something about the 1950s and 60s made colleges want to sell sweaters with their graduate year across the chest. It's a good look, but not one that we saw very long afterwards. Maybe the closest equivalent in our lifetime were those plastic year 2000 sunglasses. And as the school year drew down in the spring, guys went out looking for summer jobs. They could always count on a crisp cotton poplin sack suit to carry their formal dressing into the warmer months. Keeping the same foundation of a white Oxford and a rep tie made dressing formally pretty easy, but the cotton suiting kept you very cool. So that's what we got for you this week, guys. Obviously, this style of dressing is a bit of a time capsule. Traditional Ivy style really is reminiscent of a very specific time and place. So in order to incorporate some of these looks into your own wardrobe, the biggest challenge is trying not to let your outfit look like a costume. The same can easily be said with the bright 1980s preppy aesthetic. But within either iteration of this iconic American style, there are plenty of timeless wardrobe classics that can be worn at any time, if done so carefully. This week I tried to provide a complete wardrobe heavily informed by its own time, but I do think that there's a relevancy toward any sort of guy's capsule wardrobe concept or building a small foundation of pieces that can carry any guy who wears them throughout the majority of his life. Today we have enough distance to be able to look back at mid-century style and assess the best parts which can work universally and create a timeless wardrobe. Are you all fans of the Ivy League style? Do you dress this way now? Did you have to wear school uniforms as a kid and hate anything associated with this kind of style? Let me know in the comments down below, and if there's another time period you think I should take a look at that may be relevant to how we dress today. As always, if you're enjoying the video, please do leave a thumbs up. If you're enjoying the channel, please click that subscribe button. Once again, the channel is Some Notes on Style. I'm your host, Joseph. See you again next time, guys. Bye.